this rise in influencer culture, sometimes it's very hard to tell. A lot of MLM leaders will really mimic that influencer culture.
Welcome back to the show. Hope you're all having a great week so far. So, if you have ever known anyone or you yourself been involved in a multi-level marketing company, MLM, as they are known for short, then this is an episode that you will want to listen to. This episode, we have best-selling author Emily Lynn Paulson, who is also a social media influencer and creator. She actually has been on the show before, where we talked about her other book, Highlight Reel: Finding Honesty and Recovery Beyond the Filtered Life. Today, she is on to talk to us about her new book, Hey Hun, Sales, Sisterhood, Supremacy, and Other Lies Behind Multilevel Marketing. The multi-level marketing world has been in the news a lot lately with some documentaries and other stories of women and men too, but a lot of women who have lost their family savings and lots of money to a multi-level marketing company. Emily was involved with one for 7 years until she quit, and now she is writing about her experience, and she talks to us about how you can spot a multi-level marketing company and one that is actually a scheme and not really legitimate. And she also talks about how you can spot an influencer, someone who's really sharing their life experience on social media versus people who are really trying to just sell multi-level marketing and building a personality around that. So I think this is a great conversation, as I said, for anybody who knows somebody or they themselves have been approached about a multi-level marketing company. I feel like that's many, many of us. So you're going to learn a lot more about it today from Emily Lynn Paulson. So here we go. Emily, welcome back to the She Speaks podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be back here. Thank you.
You have a new book, and that new book is called Hey Hun, and it's about an industry that we have been hearing so much about. There have been, I think since we spoke, I've seen 3 or 4 documentaries about this space, right? And everyone is interested in it. Can you first explain what is an MLM for
Yeah.
those who maybe aren't familiar?
Yeah. So the difference between sales and multi-level marketing is the multi-level part of it. So, sales is just someone creates content or a product, sells it to the end user, like that's the sale, right? With multi-level marketing, you are selling a product to somebody, but you also have an upline of people who take a cut of that. So it's again a multi-level system, and the reason that they can be nefarious is because a majority of the profit is through recruiting and not for the sales of product. It really doesn't matter what the product is, it's all about collecting a team of people, which is why they are technically pyramid schemes with product, because so few people can actually make a profit.
So, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I'm not sure people get that part. Why is it that so few people in these multi-level pyramid marketing companies, and maybe we can give some examples too so people know, like Tupperware is like an old example, right? Of what maybe some, depending what generation you're from, maybe you remember Tupperware, or is Avon
Yeah,
also?
Avon, Mary Kay, Amway, Young Living, doTERRA, Beachbody. There's so many.
So these are examples, names that probably lots of people have heard
Mhm.
of. Why is it that, let's say, my next door neighbor who may be an Amway representative, why are they not likely to be making money?
So there are several different reasons. The biggest one is mathematical. There
Mhm.
are only so many people who can purchase products and join a company, right? Like
Mhm.
an area gets saturated very quickly. It's not like a traditional business in the sense, say you have a Burger King franchise. They do market research. So they know, okay, yes, we can sell this number of Whoppers in this area and we'll turn a profit. We'll have this number of employees in an area. This area can sustain it. With multi-level marketing, you are basically recruiting your competition in the same area. So if typically it's your friends and family. So your sister says, hey, I joined this company, you join me too. you're really tapping into the same market and
Mm,
selling to the same people. So in
mm,
that level, it gets saturated very quickly. And then it's also you're competing with other MLMs because again, there's so many broad categories. So if you are a Mary Kay rep, there's Avon, there's Saint, there's mascara, there's all these different cosmetic companies, Beauty Counter, that not only are you competing with your own and the multi-level marketing contractors in your own, you're competing with all of the other companies too, as well as the Sephora, the Safeway, the
mm,
Target, everywhere else you can buy cosmetics, right? So it's a saturation. It's really numbers, and there's only so much people are going to buy. You're basically constantly selling to the same person all of the time. And you'll
mm.
see that MLM companies, they'll be maybe a skincare company, and then all of a sudden they also come out with supplements and they also come out with shampoo because they know they only have so many customers they can pull from. So they're constantly making their customers new customers with new products, if that makes sense.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it definitely sounds familiar. Like that
Mhm.
you start buying and then suddenly they've got these new types of product lines that you didn't know that they had when they
Yeah.
probably didn't start with. So let's talk about your book, Hey Hun. It is your second book. Well, last time you were on the show, we talked about the first one. But I want to talk about the book because there's definitely overlap in terms of your life. Obviously, this is your life, what you talk about, but what inspired the book?
Yeah. Yeah, so the timeline definitely overlaps because it takes place I got sober basically halfway through the book. And so that's all about how I woke up to it and how I realized I didn't want to be involved anymore. The reason I decided to write it was really I wrote my first book. I did that really as like a it's like a living amends, right? And as a cautionary tale and also just paying it forward, being of service. And I found the feedback I got was that it was helpful to
Mhm.
women who read it. And so I, at that point, had left the MLM. I thought, this is what I need to do. Had I not written the first book, I don't know if I would have felt the need to share on that
Mhm.
level. But I had been
Mhm.
so loud in promoting the MLM and getting so many people roped into it that I felt that the level of harm was big enough that I needed to do something just as big the other way. So it
Mhm.
really pushed me into how do I share this? Do I want to share this in what way? And as I started researching more, I was like, this has to be out there. And that's why I decided to write a book.
Yeah, and I have to say in the book you are incredibly vulnerable and as I think you were in your first book as well and very honest about sharing that experience of getting involved as someone in the MLM and how you basically became successful in it and then you looked at some of the ways you were becoming successful and said, "You know what? This doesn't feel right." So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the ways that MLMs really get people involved is there's a lot of undue influence. And I'll say from the very beginning, there's a lot of alcohol involved in a lot of these companies. So
Oh.
a lot of meetings are done like over wine, mom's nights out, cocktails and conversations,
Mm.
supplements and sangria. There's always these little monikers for these get-togethers. And this is a big part of getting people into these companies is all of these little events or big and little events, just gathering people together, having electric conversation, having the products out, and having testimonials. So from the outset, you're meeting with a friend, so there's an inherent trust there. And like friend I met with, I knew like she was involved in this company, and I knew that I felt a little hesitant about it, but I didn't know why. And so there was that internal, like that intuition that like I felt a little off about it, but all of those things are really talked away. And I think the alcohol helps. I don't think that's definitely a part of kind of that undue influence. After a couple of glasses of wine, I'm like, how bad could it be? And you're told from the beginning, it's going to feel weird reaching out to people. It's going to feel weird. You're going to have people tell you no. You're going to have people who feel weird about this. And so all of that internal intuition is chipped away.
Mhm.
And I found that when I got sober, a lot of the things that I had been doing, sending lots of cold messages, not taking no for an answer when people didn't want to join me or buy from me. I couldn't do those things anymore. It was like my intuition had come back online. And I started seeing how, yeah, gosh, there were times when I used language with my team that I would consider bullying. There were times when I maybe placed bigger orders that people didn't necessarily want, or had people pay more than they wanted to. Just started realizing like that's not what I would have normally done if I had been listening to my own intuition. So
Yeah, and I know you had an article in the Daily Mail that I know you talked about how at the same time, and you talk about this in your first book about your cancer
mhm,
diagnosis, and then how that you were encouraged by your upline to use that as part of your story
yeah.
because it legitimately is part of your story,
Mhm.
was part of your story, but just also how you were encouraged to use things that maybe in retrospect you realize were not things you felt comfortable
Yeah.
with.
And you get accustomed to that because really every sob story is used in an MLM, even
Mhm.
if it's something very small, like, oh, I used to have acne and now I don't. Or there's always before and afters. There's testimonials of, oh, I got divorced, I didn't have money, and then I joined this company, and then I had all these friends. It's always this sad story, redemption tale. And so you
Mhm.
get accustomed to seeing these. And so when you have something that happens, it just feels very natural to be like,
Yeah.
oh, how can I use this? Like, how can I share this in a way that will help my business? It
Yeah.
it it just becomes so natural. And so that was one of those things after the fact, looking back, that I thought, wow, that was really duplicitous. And I think that's one thing I tried to relay in the book is how people get to this place. No
Mm.
one joins an MLM saying, I'm going to be a jerk and I'm going to scam people. And that there's a reason that these things happen over time because of
Yeah.
this closed environment you're in. And
Mhm.
you really feel like this opportunity is a gift that you're offering to other people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of it too, as you said, is you are encouraged to share your story, but the question just is what story do you share? And as you said, because of the nature of how this works, how the MLMs work and who you're selling to and the environment in which you're selling, it could encourage uses of things that maybe in retrospect you don't feel as good about. I am curious to get your perspective because we know that there are a whole lot of influencers and creators who are involved in MLMs. It is a way that they make money or have tried to make money. I know we just talking with some influencers who are part of our community, some have had good experiences with it, some not as good experiences thinking that, oh, it's going to be great. I have this big audience. I'm going to be really successful with this because I have got this big audience. What do you think attracts people who are influencers, let's say, who've built a following on social media to the MLM world?
Yeah, I think it is that too good to be true dream. And I think that there's a distinction between like influencers who do actual affiliate marketing. So I think this is one thing that gets confused is there are influencers who say they're sent a product and they get a cut every time someone buys something if they use a code or whatever.
Mhm,
And again, that's a very legitimate
mhm,
as long as people are upfront about the fact that they're an affiliate for this company, they get money for sharing it. I mean, that's straight up advertising. So, one thing that people in MLMs do is they bastardize this idea of, oh, I'm just an affiliate for this MLM company, when that's
mhm,
not how the structure works. And so I think
mhm.
there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace of what does it matter if I buy that MLM product from this person or if I buy this other affiliate product from this person. And it's very different, again, because of where the money is going, who's profiting from it, and the company in itself is predatory and lots of people aren't earning money. So I think you really have to be careful too when you're buying from an influencer. Like, is this an affiliate product? Is this an MLM product? And so just being clear on that. I think the draw when someone is already an established influencer or public figure and they go into MLM, is the draw is, I think, money, which is fine, but it's really cannibalizing your current network and knowing that they'll probably buy anything from you.
Mhm.
But it just perpetuates that idea that anyone can do this. And what ends up happening is when any kind of celebrity or bigger influencer or public figure joins an MLM company, is that people, they have these parasocial relationships and they just want to be with this person. They want to be friends with this person. And so you have situations where, so and so celebrity says, "Oh, hi, I'm a brand ambassador for Beauty Counter," or whatever. And then their followers are like, "I want to join too, because not only can I buy from you and have a connection with you, but I can be on your team." And so then they will end up really skyrocketing quickly because they have this,
I
again, they
see.
have a tapped in audience already. But then all those people joining, they are never going to have that level of success because, again, they're not celebrities. They don't have those huge audiences, but
Mhm.
they will be so bought into this dream and now they're attached to this person that they probably won't quit. So, in that way, it's really, I think that's really damaging.
Yeah.
Um, and I think another way that this can happen is, I think if the influencer doesn't necessarily understand what an MLM is, I think it takes some research on their part. Maybe if they have a close friend or family member who's in an MLM and they decide to help them out. I don't know. I do think the motivation is money, which money is a fine motivation, but you have to look at the level of harm that's coming from it. But yeah, I would say that's why. Not so
Yeah,
much.
and I'm glad you said that point and that distinction between how do you know if just as a user, and let's say I don't know, I mean, why would I know if I'm doing an affiliate link, if I'm clicking something because this influencer I follow is saying, "Hey, try this," and they get some affiliate income from it versus the MLM. But I think to your point, and I'm glad you explained this, the distinction is I could still, like, maybe I go and buy some product from them, but that's different than me buying into being a person on that MLM team. And generally requires me buying more, right? How
Yeah.
do I know if what I'm actually doing is signing up to be in an MLM?
Exactly. So I would say any money you're giving to an MLM structure or a person in an MLM structure is going into the MLM, and I would discourage that.
Mhm.
However, you are encouraged if you want to buy a product, you're going to be encouraged to join the team or buy a influencer kit or a
Ah,
affiliate kit. Or so if you are signing the dotted line and giving your social security number, like,
mm,
huge red flag, obviously. But
mhm.
if you have if it's an affiliate product, you'll generally get a code. You'll go to the
Mhm.
business website, the whatever it is, some shampoo, and you'll put in a code, right? But the site it's the business site.
Yeah,
Anyone can go there. If it's an MLM product, it's specific to that person.
yeah.
And so you can know pretty quickly, oh, this is specific to this person. It says this person is the consultant or the brand
Mm,
ambassador or the whatever. So I think there's a few different ways to kind of tell. And the other thing is, if you're buying a product through an affiliate link, that person gets their cut of the product, whatever. They're not going to be hounding you to buy more stuff. What happens in an MLM is once you've bought something, now you are going to get bugged every 60 days. You're probably going to get roped into some VIP auto ship program. You are on the hook for a
yeah,
really long time. And
yeah.
so that's something else to look out for too.
So, how do you think then the MLMs have influenced the social media and influencer space? Because one of the documentaries that I saw about LuLaRoe, a lot of the women who became very successful, to your point, some of the more original people who built up their team, as you called it, their teams, they became very successful using social media. They were
Yeah.
doing a Facebook Live and maybe later Instagram Lives, but they were using social media to build their business.
Mhm.
So I'm fascinated by how these two things come together. How do you think MLMs and influencers coexist or have come together?
Yeah. Back in the day when, again, when there were the Tupperware parties or when it was home parties, and I went to Stella and Dot parties and I went to legging parties. It was a lot of in-home things.
Yes.
So in that way, like the influence wasn't as great because you could only go like in your own town or maybe a town over, right?
Right.
But with the internet, obviously the reach was huge. You could market via email. And then with
Mm,
social media, it was really started with Facebook.
mm,
It was just, it took off like wildfire. And really when I got involved, 2014, you could post something and lots of people would see it. And I think people weren't as aware of what MLMs were at that point. There also wasn't that much to buy online. Like you
mhm.
couldn't buy stuff on Facebook back then, whereas now I say something and something pops up in my feed. So it was like a novelty. Facebook got smart because they're like, here's all these people selling stuff on our platform and we're not getting a cut of it. And so that's when they started really suppressing those posts. And that's when they started not doing so well. And then they actually ended up banning live sales on Facebook, which is how LuLaRoe operated, which you've got to think, okay, of course they're not going to let people sell for free without taking a cut of it. So they really, I think, took charge of it after the fact. And so for the people who got in before, they were able to create a big following. And on Instagram, again, like this rise in influencer culture, sometimes it's very hard to tell. MLM, a lot of MLM leaders will really mimic that influencer culture. And so you look at someone's profile and you can't really tell. I will say, like, a red flag though is if you're wondering if someone's an influencer versus if someone's in an MLM acting as an influencer, their bio is generally a really good, like, telltale sign, like helping women live their best lives, top something percent, or like hope dealer, partnered with. That's another kind of phrase they use a lot, partnered with a top wellness company. That's a red flag too, because people who are influencers aren't going to say that.
Mm.
They're just going to give their code and do their live. So you can really tell by the bio.
Like, as you're talking, light bulbs are going off for me because there's been so much lately in the press because these documentaries are being made, and there's an overlap, as we talked about, with influencers, and some of it is completely fine because they're either giving an affiliate code, or as we talked about, there's legitimate upfront, this is what I'm doing. But I do think maybe this is why too the term influencer it gets such a bad rap
Yeah.
because people think, "Oh, you're using this is a sort of monetary transaction. It's not about me following you because I'm interested in your life and you're telling me about your life, or legitimately, and sometimes you do a brand partnership and sometimes you have an affiliate code.
Mhm.
It's I'm following you, but suddenly you're trying to sell me on something. And that there's more insidious element to it.
Yeah. And especially when it's an MLM, it's never just a product, right? It's
Mm,
the whole lineup of products and it's the lifestyle, this life changing whatever. It's an MLM never takes the shape of just like one product and it's this casual thing. It takes over your entire life and your whole personality. And so you'll typically not see an influencer who has a broad lineup of products if there's someone in an MLM. You will find people who maybe made it big in an MLM and then have stepped away from it, but it runs in the background. And maybe they're doing
mm.
something like they're promoting their running program or they're a stylist or something. But then once in a while, you'll see pop up whatever beauty counter, Rodan and Fields, any number of things. And you
Mm.
know that they're still working in MLM in the background, which, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the downside for people who get involved. So let's say you're pretty downstream, which is, as you said, the majority of people in the MLM are not making money. It's the people at the higher levels who got in earlier maybe and built the teams. But if you're one of the people lower in the rungs, which are the majority, you are not really making money. And a lot of those people really suffer. They suffer monetarily. There are impacts to obviously their financial situation, their families, their relationships. It impacts so much.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the things you've seen that are the negative impacts to these, let's say, women who are getting involved lower in the downstream in an MLM?
Yeah. And the first thing I'll say there is every single MLM out there is already completely oversaturated. So you're not going
Mm,
to find an MLM unless like a new one starts tomorrow that
mm,
isn't that you're not already going to be at the bottom. So if
mhm,
you're sold like saying you're getting in early, you're not. So I think one of the things to realize too with these companies is when you join, you are told like you can do anything you want. It's all up to you. It's up to
mhm,
your hard work. If you want to make it happen, you can.
mhm,
And so it's this meritocracy where if you want it, you can make as much money as you want. Well, that sounds amazing. Like that sounds
mhm.
great. It's all up to me. Perfect.
Yeah,
As long as I want to cold call a bunch of people, if I do all the work, it'll
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
And what evidence do you have to the contrary? You don't. So if you don't make it, if you don't make that sale or get those people to join you or whatever, who do you have to blame?
yeah.
There's this endless ladder of you should have read more personal development material. Did you put
Mm,
on enough training calls? Did you do this? Did you do that?
mm,
Did you reach out to 100 people? Did you make your list? Did you do that? There's always more that you could do. And
yeah.
so I think there's this sunk cost fallacy when people join that, well, I'm going to make it work for another month, or
Mm,
true, I haven't tried this yet. I haven't talked to that person. I'm going to just pay for another XYZ product. I'll pay for another month. Oh, maybe I need to go to convention and really level up. So you're
mm.
primed with you're never doing enough.
Oh my God.
So that keeps a lot of people in. First of all, the hope that they will be the top 0.3%. And then the thought of, I'm already in this deep, I might as well stick it out one more month, or I might as well this, I might as well that. And
Mm,
then the other thing is that you're not encouraged to do a profit loss statement. You're not encouraged to really notice how many hours you're working, doing
mhm,
meaningless tasks, posting on social media, unpaid labor, essentially. And
mhm,
a lot of people in these schemes are moms. You're already used to your unpaid labor, like holding up the entire world. So you're like, I'm on social media anyway. I'm driving to drop my kid off anyway. I might as well make a phone call. So it's all of these little things that you don't add up. And so the amount of work you're doing versus the payout, I mean, it's ridiculous. So I think not doing your due diligence with a profit loss statement, which again, you're not encouraged to do, and also just the belief that, well, you could have always done more, that keeps a lot of people stuck. And I think that is the most damaging thing. There's more, there's a lot of faith manipulation because a lot of these schemes run thick in church communities. And
mm.
so you believe I'm not working hard and now prosperity gospel, God doesn't love me. Or when you combine those things, like that's very damaging too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is so much in here, Emily, that you've just said. I mean, first of all, that these MLMs feed off of what our country we're a country of self-starters. We want to just go for it and make our success. That's what we've built as the attitude of people who are going to succeed here.
Hmm.
So if the MLM is feeding into that, and simultaneously, the point you made about how a lot of these women are moms
Hmm.
and they are used to unpaid labor.
Hmm.
Wow, that is such an important part of it because you think to yourself, I'm not going to focus on every single thing I'm doing. Is it really contributing?
Hmm.
Is it contributing to my P&L? Am I making money? And that is a really interesting mentality that they're feeding into
Yeah.
and reality because so many women are their days are full of unpaid labor. And
Hmm.
then the faith element, which I did not realize that there is that component that the MLMs are very prevalent in communities that have a lot of religious element to them.
Yeah.
So when you think about somebody who's in it and women who've been in it, how do you get yourself out of it? Because there is, as you said, the sunk cost mentality too, that fallacy that if I just keep throwing money into it, I've already thrown money into it. So if I just do a little bit more, I will get there. So
Yeah.
how do people get out of it?
So I would say, take a breath. Once you're at that point where you realize, oh no, what have I done? Take a breath. Like you don't have to do anything right away. But I would always recommend doing a profit loss statement. And
Mm,
this doesn't have to be fancy. Get out a piece of paper and like literally write down everything you've purchased from that initial product kit to any products you're buying for yourself to maybe any retention events you've gone to, any website fees, babysitters you've had to get to go to all these things. Like, take stock, because one
Mm,
thing you'll notice is on social media, people will be like, "Look, I got a paycheck. Oh, I got a $400 paycheck or whatever." And it's okay, but you spent $600. So
mm,
again, just putting that little dose of reality in there, and then take note of like how many hours you're really working a day, and
mm.
then do some math. Okay, I've actually made, maybe I've made no money, or maybe I've made $100 hourly. Like, I'm making way less than minimum wage. That's one thing to start with. And then it might not be so scary to unwind it, to say, I'm
Mhm.
really not in that deep and I'm losing money. So I'm going
Right.
to quit. This is not worth it to me. Also, take stock of like your relationships. Because one thing that happens in MLMs is all of a sudden you're in proximity with these people all the time who really feel like friends. And sometimes,
Mhm.
well, most times it's a friend who gets you in, or a sister or a family member.
Mhm.
And so it feels very familial. It feels like you're friends when it's just proximity. So
Mm.
look at those relationships. Have your external relationships been strained, or have you been encouraged to see outsiders as like haters if they don't want to join you? Do the people who are supposedly your friends, do they check in on you at any other time other than when they need you to make a sale? Really just
Yeah.
take a step back and look at that. Look at your own behavior on social media. Just really try and take a step back and look, like, how am I behaving differently now than before? Slowly unwind that, and you might find that it's much easier when when you're a little more objective about it.
Mhm.
I think the other thing too to look at is like, what is your, once you realize it's harmful, like, what's your level of harm?
Yeah.
And for someone, like, I have lots of friends who are still in MLMs,
Mhm.
and they are maybe like loosely involved. Like, they have a customer, or like their mom buys something from them and they're like,
Right.
or like, the level of harm, that, are you still involved? Yeah. Is money still going up the chain? Yeah. Are you still involved in something predatory? Yeah. What's the level of harm and how do you feel about that? You've got to take stock of that. For
Mhm.
me, the level of harm was very large because
Right.
I had a lot of people underneath me who were
Right.
not earning money. Take stock of that, and give yourself some grace there. If you are involved, just like me, everyone gets involved for a good reason, and you think it's the dream you're selling, you think you're doing a good thing. You don't have to do anything right away. But again, I think being objective, taking a step back, and then I think the last and maybe most important thing is, where are you getting your information? Who is benefiting from it?
Yeah.
So if all of the good things you've been told about your experience and the MLM, the company you're involved in, the people you're involved in, are from those people,
Yeah.
maybe talk to somebody else, maybe look
Mhm.
elsewhere. All of the facts and figures, everything in my book is all publicly available information, uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
that just you're not told to look at when you're in an MLM.
Right. And one of the things too that you probably, I'm sure, and we talked about this earlier, you're encouraged it to build social presence, to have people aware and
Mhm,
get more. That's part of how you bring more people into it. And the thing with social media is that you always get feedback,
mhm,
right? You can't not get feedback as somebody. And we talk to social media influencers all day long, and they really understand their audience because their audience is constantly giving them feedback.
mhm.
So I'm sure that people do hear from others to understand what kind of impact it's having. So it's maybe harder to ignore what is happening. And kudos to you as somebody who did have so many people below you. You were probably, it was probably quite profitable for somebody like you because you were higher up. To be able to walk away from that is hard. It's very hard because it's money. It
Yeah.
you have five children, right? It feeds your family. Those are really hard things to walk away from. If you were thinking about the response you've had to the book on social media, what are people saying?
It's been overwhelmingly positive.
Mhm.
And I will say I've always been someone with really good boundaries on social media. So I think that has helped. And I think really the only negative feedback has been from people who have not read the book and probably will not read the book. They just assume, oh, you're a hater. Again,
Mm,
it's that closed loop of information that you're
right.
told when you're in an MLM. The feedback really has been like, wow, I'm so glad you said this, because I really thought I failed. Like, I
Yeah.
really thought it was my fault. I thought I didn't
Mm,
do enough, or wow, I really saw this, I see this now, my sister is in that. It touches so many people
yeah.
that it's been surprisingly overwhelmingly positive. Like
Yeah.
I was bracing myself for like, you know,
Mhm.
negative feedback, and there really wasn't any.
Yeah, and I think if you hear your story, people have to, as I said before, give you kind of credit for the fact that you walked away from something that was financially lucrative
Yeah,
for reasons that were to be closer to your ethics,
yeah,
right? To uphold your ethics. And that's a hard thing to do, and something that I think people probably find inspiring.
yeah. And I really tried my best to really make this self-reflective. So when
Mhm.
I wrote this, it wasn't to throw any other people under the bus. It was really
Mhm.
to fully throw myself under the bus and say, this is what I wish I had known before.
Right.
And not in a judgment of anybody else, but to say, this is what the information that's out there. This is what I wish I would have known. This might be what you're experiencing and this is why people do the things they do. So it's
Mhm.
not a pointing fingers thing. I want to be very careful about saying it's not any particular person, it's not any particular company, it's not any particular,
Mhm.
it's the system really that's very flawed.
Yeah. I'm curious too if, because you mentioned this earlier, that so many people involved in MLMs are women,
Mhm.
right? Especially, I guess, given the category too, it might be different, but a lot of the categories, jewelry, cosmetics, all of that, you have a lot more women involved.
Mhm.
Do you think that in terms of the space of social media, because you are asked to have a social media presence, do you think that maybe women involved in an MLM are treated or viewed differently than the men? Are they held to a different standard?
I think it is overwhelmingly women.
Hmm.
I know it is. It's 85% women.
Yeah.
I would say women are held to a different standard in every industry, right? So it's going to be the same with men in an MLM. I don't think that changes from just the misogyny that exists in the world. But I will say where it's seen as a female empowering industry, that's what you'll see in
Hmm.
MLMs very much so as I'm a
Hmm.
boss babe, I'm a girl boss, I'm whatever.
Hmm.
The CEOs in these companies are all men. And
Oh, wow.
it's like this female empowerment project, regardless of the fact that most women are losing money, and yet men are at the top of the pyramid. And I
So
don't,
it's like a marketing tactic.
it's a
It's
complete mark.
female empowerment is like a marketing tactic
Yeah,
as it relates to how an MLM, like if it helps bring more women in, we'll say it's female
yeah,
empowerment.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. Yep.
Wow. Emily, thank you so much for spending this time talking to us, sharing, and such really insightful work that you've done here. If people want to learn more about you, find the book, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So I'm Emily Lynn Paulson on all platforms. Yeah. So you can find me there and I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you're an influencer or a brand that wants to work with us, please feel free to email us at info@shespeaks.com. Until next time.